special welcome to our online audience today and to our panel of experts here at Stockholms Auktionsverk and the exhibition Inside Swedish Design. My name is Leah Forslund, and I will shortly hand over to the floor of CEOs, designers, and managing directors to debate how we best can expand the realm of conventional sustainability. How do we set better goals, acting as the most sustainable design brands in the world? Here to discuss with me is Håkan Nordin, Head of Sustainability at Bolon. Nordin has for the past years led Bolon's journey towards a more sustainable product. This includes increasing the use of recycled material with 500% and running the production of 100% renewable energy. We also have with us Charlotte van der Lancken, designer at CVD Lab. Van der Lancken is focused on expanding her design practice using new material sciences such as weather coloring and 3D printed wood composites. She's pushing the material innovation as a starting point in her new design process. We also have Erik Lund, Managing Director at Källemo. Lund has continued the family tradition of sustainable quality with the ambition to produce objects that last over time. Aesthetically, artistically, physically, and metaphysically. Finally, we have Johan Lindau, CEO at Blå Station. Lindau is known in the industry as a strong contributing force to necessary change. He uses 7 criteria for sustainability, from materiality to ethics. This afternoon is all about the future of sustainability as we know it. In 2020, Swedish furniture brands were the most sustainable in the world, according to a survey done by Dodds & Shoe. But how do we see Swedish design continue to push global prominence? Without further ado, we're going to start with Håkan Nordin, and perhaps the biggest question of the debate. Håkan, you have made amazing progress when it comes to materials and energy use in the production. What is the next phase for Bolon? Define for us what you think lies beyond being climate neutral.
I think we have just started. These amazing numbers that you talked about, the 500% increase on recycled materials, has to do with that we took a decision to move from having one green collection to have all collection green. So it doesn't matter what you choose from, you get the same amount of recycled material in all collection. That's why we had this tremendous development of recycled material. And when it comes to the energy, renewable energy, it's pretty, well, I say easy. Being in Sweden, having 100% production in Sweden, then we can easily move to renewable energy. That's not the case if you see globally. If you have a company with many factories in many countries, it's quite a tricky thing to have 100% renewable energy. So I think we gain from having our own factory, no subcontractor and so on, so we have everything in Ulricehamn, Sweden. Now, I would say that we have barely started because the challenge ahead of us is to become circular and going from producing floor to take back floor or see that our floors is a part of a circular economy. Maybe our floor gets another life in another area, another product, but it can also be a new floor, a new Bolon floor. That's a huge challenge ahead of us. And when it comes to being climate neutral, we're having this, the greenhouse gas protocol, which I would say is a de facto standard globally now. And then we talk about moving from just having 100% renewable in production, which we have today, to have 100% or climate neutral in full value chain, from raw material to after customer, after use. And that's a huge challenge. Normally, all company they have to gate and then they sell the product and then they have no responsibility afterwards. But when you talk about circularity, you need to include what will we do after our customer have used the product. How can it become a new resource and not waste? So this is big question for us, and we're moving into them. So we have set a new goal. So we will become 50% circular in 2028 and 50% less climate impact in the value chain till 2028. So that's
very
a
interesting, and
challenge.
it's a very interesting kind of mind game, thinking about what makes circularity and how we can push it forward. Johan Lindau, you have an interesting idea around ethics of sustainability. So the idea also of kind of how to shift our mindset around it, making sure that you produce furniture that follows the most honest value proposition, you say. One big question is, how do you ensure that we make room for this type of self-reflection, similar to what Håkan mentioned just now?
The big problem in all the industries, and actually in the furniture industry also, is that you add sustainability after you're ready with the product, after you're marketing it. Then you have to certify it, and then you have to think about all the steps you should have taken before. So therefore we implemented very early in the end of 1980s that we had our 7 criteria. Their ethic and morals are number 7, and so if you don't want to cut corners and do something that you can't stand for, that 7th step takes care about that. So we start with higher design quality, because you don't want to do something that is inside the trend, that is very short-living. So if you follow the criteria we have, we can maintain our sustainability, and we can stand behind our product. And the day we want to have it certified, we can do it immediately. So we don't have any steps to adjust the product to secure certification. So that's the way we do, and we can lean back and we can feel very safe in the way we work.
So starting with sustainability, Jonathan Luncan, you collaborate with material scientists and spend a lot of time doing trial and errors on your way. So similar to what Johan is talking about here in terms of starting very early on and incorporating the sustainable idea. How do you see the role of the designer shifting in the 2020s? Explaining a little bit about the decisions you've made to do the process like you do.
Yeah, I worked together last year with scientists and researchers and chemical researchers at RISE, and that gave me some insights in new biomaterials and what science can do with, for example, wood or mushrooms, and it can become really incredible things that you can't imagine, that are not only sustainable and can replace many of the harmful materials we have today, but they can also add new qualities that are really amazing. So for me that was really inspiring as a designer, and I think, as you just said, that as a designer you will have to start already at the idea phase to implement new biomaterials that can replace harmful materials, and also think about the circularity. So you have to, already from the beginning, you have to think about the raw material and the end-of-life scenario.
That's interesting. Also, coming back to the thought exercise that Håkan was mentioning early on, Erik Lund from Källemo, you often talk about layers of sustainability, and we're kind of touching on it, all of us here. But some even being metaphysical. You talk about what do you see lying in the future of this mind-led sustainability that we're talking about here? It might seem a bit abstract, but I think it's interesting to hear your thoughts on it.
Yes, our approach to sustainability is, as you all said, doing the right thing from the beginning, to formulate yourself. It doesn't matter if you have a very good technical quality or it's very well-made chair. If you get bored of it, it will still end up into the container, even if it's circular. So that's very important for us when we start with a furniture project, that they have a certain expression and visual quality. If you're looking at an old chair, for instance, from the 7th century, why is it still here today? It's not because they had a very good glue or or a strong fabric. It's the expression of the chair that gives it a long life. So that's very important for us.
At Källemo, do you feel like you have time for these type of meetings or sessions? Do you set up a metaphysical discussion or a debate before you start the project?
I think it's a family company, and it's our father who founded Sven Lund, who founded Källemo. And very early he started to work with artists and designers as Bruno Mattsson, and also the Danish well-known designers. And he very much liked what he when we worked with them. Then at the 60s and 70s, when you had the Million program, you have the flat package, you had also this of testing machines reports. He thought that the furniture industry became quite boring, and they're only looking at the technical aspects and also often the lowest price. So therefore, when later on at the 80s, when he met Jonas Bolin and the concrete chair, and that was really the first furniture, you can say, that showed what we meant and he meant, that the furniture could have an added values than just the technical.
It's interesting to think about where you start with these ideas. I'm curious, Håkan, how do you set constraints at Bolon? Similar question as I asked Eric, do you sit down and have a meeting? Is there a debate laid out where you say, these are the kind of the formula or the process that we have to take in order to get into this mind-led sustainability, if you like?
Yeah, we're moving into that part because, as you said earlier, in history, you produce a floor and then you start to think about maybe we can make it less environmental impact here and there and so on. But now we have pushed ourselves and set goals. So now we are steering towards sustainability goals, which is new. And when you have them, you also have what kinds of constraints or what should be included, what should not be included, and how can we also bring it into the design phase. So it's a quite a big process that we are having just now at Bolon when we take groups of people from production, from design, and so on, and we start to move ahead how to reach these goals and how to avoid making mistakes to put, for example, bad chemicals in the floor, which we don't have today and we should not have in the future either. But that kind of say, you have something you need to follow. What do you put in? But you also need to put this circularity. How can we have circularity? And I think here comes a problem that we have to bring outside us, and it's very hard to get the right quality of a recycled material. When you buy virgin material, you can get perfect quality to the perfect price, and you can buy it from many places. When you're going to find more recycled material, say that we now from increase 500%, we want to double or triple it from this level, we will have problem finding the right quality of recycled material out there. So then you need to include more people. And I see big companies like IKEA and others need to discuss this in a broader context, because you need to, how can we have a market for recycled material that we can use that's a part of circular economy? We have just started that, and I think we already have problem to find more recycled material. Maybe the solution is that the full take back of our own floor, then we have solved the situation. But just now, if you sell the floor, maybe it comes back in 15 years, maybe longer. So you need, how can we find raw material? And I think that's a huge challenge, and you need to incorporate more than just Bolon. And I think the same goes also when you come to the logistics of bringing a floor back to us or for a recycling plant or somewhere else. So there's a new challenge here. You have, as you say, our own rules for our product, but then the new circular economy will bring much more things in the loop that we have to discuss.
And that brings me to the next question to Johan here, because many brands are taking these actions now and they're having these meetings, but there's also, of course, the risk of running into jargon and setting up kind of these comfortable I don't know, these kind of comfortable frameworks for sustainability that isn't quite pushing it as much as you are doing here. Johan, what do you feel about the companies that are settling on this kind of comfortable level of sustainability, ticking boxes, if you like?
Well, I think we have like our sustainability work is like in our DNA. It was that from the start, and I think it's the hardest work for companies is to get sustainability into their DNA. And it's not just some rules to follow, because 10 years later there is a new leadership and maybe they say that profit is the most important thing, and then the rules that you have will be disappearing because profit and economy is of the utmost importance. So that I think it's very important to try to get the sustainability as a DNA. And also, which I've noticed that from the beginning when we had product briefs, it was like the product, what we wanted with the product for the designers. But now since like 10 years, we also have all the logistic chain and the sustainability in the briefs. So the designer should be involved from the beginning. And I think, like Charlotta, it's very good that designers take involving steps in the product's sustainability. So, and I see when you have the new examined designers from the design schools, all of them talk about sustainability. So now it's very easy to implement them in the process and let them work with sustainability. And then I think we will have better and more sustained product in the future for everybody, because the designers won't let it go. I don't think they will take the bet that, like say, we want to have a product that will sell a hell of a lot and we will earn a lot of money. I don't think that's the future. The future is like you should be proud of a product. And so I think we will involve the designers even more in the sustainable work that we are already. So I think that's one way ahead.
I really like that initiative, and I'm turning to you as well, Charlotte, because having kind of designers as a solution, as part of pushing sustainability further, I think is excellent. But how do you feel that you can stay kind of critical and self-reflective as a designer, often coming into these collaboration, as with Johan, for instance, or with any other manufacturer that you work with?
Yeah, I strongly believe in collaboration. I think that collaboration can accelerate the change towards a circular economy. And I think, I mean, many of the problems we are struggling with in the furniture business, like polyurethane foam or two components, glue or lacquer, we have them in common. So we all share the same problems. So I think that I think that we can overwin these problems as a team, where if everybody can invest a little bit of time or money into a problem, I think we can find better material or alternatives that can replace these harmful things.
So it's in the dialogue together as well that you can come to reach these kind of new heights, I think, in sustainability, which is very needed. Eric, I want to turn to you and also thinking about what you said earlier about looking back into time and thinking about what sustainability has been always and how we can kind of foster it. Because one of my worries is that thinking about new types of sustainability, we're kind of also rushing these goals. You know, everyone's talking about some things that they're going to reach in the future, but again, like Johan was saying, like, what is in the DNA? Do we have to be cautious about these new measures that we throw in and apply?
Yeah, I think so, because I think it's a problem when you're talking with architects, for example, when they're doing a new interior, especially for public areas, they have to follow certain rules like technical and so on. So it's a problem that they can't use these small scale, unique products. And I was talking about the Million program before, and the politics they had. That was really they had good thoughts, but looking back at it now, we see it in another way. So I think you can't rush with this big.
How do we slow these decisions down? How do you do it with your organization? Do you say, let's not run into these type of decisions. Let's take a step back and think about them. How do you do that?
I think this pandemic has slowing everything down. And I think in some way that's good. You have to think once more and formulate yourself and do the right thing.
That's really good. I think I turn to you, Håkan, as well. Like, do you, on another hand, do you think that we're looking at the Swedish design industry coming out on top in this survey, for instance? Do you think that Swedish companies are doing enough? Do you think that we have enough for the next decade, or do you think that we need more research, more material science, and things that Charlotte's working with, for instance, to push things further?
Yeah, I think if you take it from the environmental point of view, we need to rush it. But if you see how fast can a change happen in a society, in a company, it's a kind of marathon run, and that's why we also set an 8 years goal. It seems very far away, but you need this process. You need this to there is a quite an. I don't think 8 years is slow. I think you need time to have the transition. And I think when it comes to circularity, it's a thing that we will work on over decades. It's same with climate. The world should have zero climate impact 2050. It's 30 years from now. So there is a really, really long run there. But but at the same time, we need, we are building houses now. We are putting floors in new houses now, and they will be alive for many, many years ahead. So there is a two sides of the coin, I would say here. But I think also the cooperation. I think you mentioned glue, and I think glue is a problem in all kind of branches, not just in the flooring companies, because you have lots of glue all over. When we have glue, there's difficulties with the circularity. You get problems. So I see that there need to be more kind of cooperation between different kind of organization, and when you expand this value chain, you also find you need to work in other ways. You maybe also find other business model how to incorporate these things. So there's lots of things that need to happen. So I think it's good to have to working with a decade follow us, maybe 2 decades. But in the same way, it's tricky because you need to have the changes now as well. So it's
the changes takes time.
Yeah.
One of our 7 criteria is to work with recyclable materials. Yeah. And when we was founded, the 7 criteria in mid of 80s, that was like a problem to find the recycled materials or work with material that could be recyclable. Today, everything is not everything, but most of products or material are recyclable, but maybe not all of the materials get recycled. So, but we have come in 30 years, we have come far. So now that criteria is not the most important for us because most of the material is recyclable. But then they come in the new loop is like, if you have a product, you should be able to dismount it to recycle it. So therefore, you have to, in the process for a designer, you have to be aware that if I do these steps, I can't do these steps in the end of the product's life. So I have to do this way instead, because then I can take it apart and recycle all the things. And you can really already see things in the furniture industry that it's changing a lot. Like if you go back 5 years, many upholstery companies was gluing the textile to the foam. That is almost disappearing now because you can't recycle a textile if it's glue on it. So things are happening, and as Erik said, I think also it will we will have a new speed to develop these kind of designs because of the pandemic, because we have had an insight that we are affecting the world. So I have big trust in the new Green Deal that is coming. So yeah.
I think it's interesting what you're mentioning here because it's also to do with the brief stage. And I wanted to ask Charlotte as well, do you feel like you have enough as a designer to dig into these kind of constraints that Johan is talking about? Does the brief have to change for the designer? Do we have to start with a different formulation? What do you feel when the brief lands on your table? How does it feel for you now, and what would you like to change?
Yeah, I think it's quite a big questions, and it's the answers are not always easy. Like, what is sustainability, and how do we make it sustainable? Because what we know today might be different tomorrow. Still, we need to constantly learn about new materials, about processes, about local production, less transports, and we have to take this into the design process. So as you say, maybe if you're a new designer, you might have learned a lot in school, but for designers already out there, doesn't have that from their
but would it be
education.
interesting, for instance, and on playing on what Johan was saying, would it be interesting to have like a no glue brief? Like, do you have to be that kind of? Do you have to incorporate it into already in the thinking way ahead of when the product gets made? Would that be a solution for you, for instance?
Absolutely. I think designers are really good at taking set values and predicted qualities and put them together into a product. That is something designers really can do, and I think I mean, it would be a great idea to, for example, have a place where you can go and say that these materials would be good in a circular aspect, or this material does not contain harmful substances, or like a handbook would be great, both for designers but also maybe for producers.
Back to you, Johan. Maybe you want to answer Charlotte there. Is there something that you want to add to the process, like adding a step or rewriting the brief? Have you been thinking about that the same way?
Well, I think it should be a collaboration, because I think design shouldn't be that the designer do a product and then you have a producer that produces it. It should be like a collaboration. We need something, and then you have a brief, and then you work together with the designer. So if the designer do something that you have to glue the textile here to make it beautiful, then the producer should say, no, we don't use that method here. We have to find out another way to make this beautiful. So I believe very much in the collaboration, and I think most of the designers are very involved in their product like it's a baby. They want to do the best with their baby, and the other parent is the producer. And we also want to have a long-lived, well-educated baby. So I think everything is down to the collaboration, but it's of course of its utmost importance that the sustainability is in the brief. And even the logistic, because many think about logistic like it's boring. I remember myself 10, 15 years ago, I thought logistic isn't that funny to work with. Nowadays it's the best thing I know to solve these logistic chains, that nothing should be by itself. So I think that is also very good if the designer and the producer collaborate with. So find the right industry close to another industry, so we don't have to do stupid logistic solutions. So we have to add that, because I know that the designers, they can handle a tough brief if they have a producer that stands behind them and say, yes, let's do it this way instead. So
it's interesting what you say. So collaborations with designers, but also maybe with suppliers and adding other manufacturers to the mix. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yeah.
That sort of thinking about it one step further into the supply chain effectively.
yeah, the industry is very important, and many things. I've heard the discussion the latest years that everything should be locally produced nearby your own factory, etc. Maybe that isn't the best solution. Maybe there are other producers somewhere else that do something much better. So we haven't framed us. We want to do everything in Sweden, but we haven't framed us to say, okay, if I can buy something better and more sustainable from somebody else a little bit further away, and I do the logistic chain, that's the better solution to do it next door and do a lower quality product. So yeah, I think the industry must be aware that there is a big change going on.
It's very interesting, and I think it's very interesting to propose some questions on a collaborative level to a wider field. I think that sounds very healthy. We're going to say goodbye in a few minutes, but Eric, I wanted to leave you with the last question. Is there something that you would like to imagine for the Swedish design industry? Is there a set of questions that you would make sure that they're asked in the next decade, in the 20s?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's a big question.
It's a big question to tell Johan what to do, but but of course I have fully respect for all the designers and companies we have in Sweden. They have a strong vision and they are standing for it. But as for me, I can only talk for myself, and I think we have been chosen to produce everything in Sweden, and we have around 50 subcontractors in an area of 50 kilometers, because we're in the middle of Småland. You can produce almost anything. I think the big question is what you do. And for me, it's important to have this unique design, the visual quality, and some handcraft, and combining high tech and low tech. And I think that gives good furniture with a high visual quality, and that's also long term.
So I imagine you in the forest in Småland, going around to the different people and asking the questions, what are we making? I think that's quite interesting, and it's quite a deep question. Do you often get to have these kind of conversations? Can you have these dialogues? Do you have time to have these dialogues with the people that you work with?
Yes, I think we have more and more actually. And
how do you do that? How do you find that time for the audience and for people who are listening? How do you make sure to find that qualitative time?
Yeah, but it's important. Of course, you can communicate with all people all over the world. But I think it's very important for us to have a close collaboration, and you physically can go to a contractor and feel and smell the material. And also when we're working with many designers, they are following out to the companies, and we have,
So back to the conversation. I really like that idea. Is there any further thoughts in the panel on to what Eric just said? Do you agree with having conversations close to heart?
Yeah, I think it's a must to have this conversation, and I think you have it with the supplier, but we also need to maybe start to have them with the customers, if you're going to have the circularity.
Great. That brings us to an end. Big thank you to the panel for your insights and reflections and thoughts, and thank you for watching from here inside Swedish Design.